What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome to Spawn Guides, the series where I cover all the most common spawns and how they behave on every map in Call of Duty Ghosts for Domination. In today's episode, we're going to be covering one of the more complicated maps, and that is Chasm. Let's get into it. Alright, so starting it off, if you guys are new to the series and you haven't seen the prelude yet, make sure you go and watch that first because it introduces a base of knowledge that you need to be able to understand exactly what I'm talking about throughout this series. I'll leave you guys an annotation link on the screen right here, as well as a link in the description. Okay, so Chasm, like I said, is a very complicated map to learn the spawns on, and that's just because there are so many levels to this map. There's the underground train station, then there's like the main level, and then on top of that, there's a second story to a building, and then there's one building that's kind of collapsed that has like 3 stories, but it's kind of hard to tell because it's all collapsed and falling off a cliff basically. So it can get a little bit confusing, but I did make a few changes to the way I display the spawns here. You'll see that I have little arrows underneath a couple of the spawns, and this arrow indicates that the spawn is underground, and there are actually only 5 spawns that are underground, but these 5 spawns can be really confusing if you're only thinking of one level of the map. So starting it off with the A flag, we have the spawn on the bottom left. That one's really straightforward. It's looking straight at the A flag, and it's in a nice little corner there, so that behaves exactly how you'd expect. Then we have a spawn like right next to the A flag, and then right beside that, it's actually right underneath that, is the spawn that's underground. The spawn that's underground here, it's the one that you can see on the bottom right, that's where the picture is. This is one of the most common A spawns in the game, and a lot of people fail to recognize this spawn right here. So this is one that you really have to be aware of. This is one of the most common A spawns, like I said. And then for the top right, 2 spawns there. There's one that's above ground right next to the bus. That one's relatively rare because it is kind of out in the open. So if there are any enemies in, I don't know, anywhere within that line of sight, then you're not likely to spawn right here. But the one below it is quite common. For the B flag, I could only find 2 spawns that were specifically attached to the B flag. And as you can see, there's the one on the left. And this one's over towards the C flag, sort of, but it's kind of nestled in that corner of that building there that's collapsing. And then the other one is over towards the A flag, all the way on that side, kind of where all those broken offices are. Moving on to the C flag, this is where things start to look a little complicated, but it's really not that bad. The top left spawn there, that is an extremely rare C spawn. It only happens in very specific situations, and I couldn't even tell you exactly what situation that would be. I only spawned here like once in maybe 50 or 60 times at the C flag, so you can basically just ignore this one, but it is nice to know that it is there and it is possible. Now right below that one, this one can be relatively common if you hold C and B, but you'll notice it is quite open. So if anybody's in your line of sight right there, it's not likely you're going to spawn here, so if any enemies are pushed on that side of the map, then you're not likely to spawn right here. Just below that one, we have one way in the back corner behind the C flag. This one behaves exactly how you'd expect. It's anchored by teammates, so if you have a teammate camping in that diner back there, then you are likely to spawn here. And also, if all the other spawns are blocked, then this is probably going to be your default spawn. Now, just to the right of that one, this one is actually an extremely common C spawn, especially if your team is pushing up towards the A flag, or even just pushing up into the restaurant or into that building attached to the restaurant. So this is a very common spawn, and you definitely have to look out for this one. Just above that, this spawn is actually below the C flag, and it's underground just at the bottom of the escalators next to the crashed train. Now the last one that's just above that, that's actually right where that bomb site is for search and destroy and search and rescue, and it's kind of halfway up the escalators. Okay, so finally we have the shared spawn on this map, and this spawn is actually a very important spawn. I told you before that that underground A spawn was one of the most common A spawns. This one is also one of the most common A spawns, but at the same time it is a shared spawn as well. I have spawned here by only holding the B flag, and I have spawned here by only holding the A flag, so this is a shared spawn, but it is also an extremely common A spawn. So if your enemies do hold A, expect that they might spawn here. Alright, so that's going to cover the spawn locations on Chasm. Now it's time to test your guys' knowledge of how the spawns behave on this map. Okay, so for the first test, the green team holds C and B, and the red team holds A. Where would a red player spawn right now? And just keep in mind, once again, if there's an arrow above the player, that means they're on the top level. And if there's an arrow below the player, that means they're below ground. I'll give you guys a few seconds to make your decision. If you chose one of these 2 spawns right here, then you'd likely be correct. Let's go over why that is. So first off, just by looking at the positioning of the green players, they're putting a lot of pressure on the A spawns, and they're actually blocking off most of the A spawns, as you can see, especially that guy that is right at the top of the stairs inside the building looking right towards the A flag. So this leaves us with just one A spawn, or A specific spawn anyways, but remember I said that that escalator spawn also behaves as an A spawn a lot of the times as well, so that's also a very likely choice. For the second test, we have the exact same positioning, but we're just going to say that this green player right over here gets killed. Where will the green player spawn right now? Once again, I'll give you guys a few seconds to make your choice. If you picked one of these two spawns right here, then you're likely correct. Let's once again go over why that is. So in this situation right here, the green team is the team that's putting all the pressure on the red team, so the red team isn't really blocking any green spawns off. This means we really only have to focus on where the green players are anchoring the spawn towards. And as you can see, we have two groups of green players. We have two green players over in this area down at the bottom, and then we have three green players up towards the B flag building. Now looking at those two groups, each of those groups has a spawn right next to them, so it could really go either way, but I'm leaning more towards the top B spawn just because there are more green players up there, and therefore I feel like it's a little bit more likely that that spawn is going to be anchored up in that area. Moving on to the final test, we're going to switch up the situation a little bit here. The red team in this case holds B and A, and they're putting quite a bit of pressure on the C flag, whereas the green players that hold the C flag are kind of pushed up towards the mid-map area. Where would a green player spawn right now? I'll give you guys a few seconds to make your decision. The most likely spawns are these two spawns right here. Let's have a quick look at why that is. This one's actually relatively simple. If you just look to where the green players are anchored to, they're anchored up the map into the restaurant area, and therefore they're anchoring the spawn forwards. They're not going to be spawning at one of the back C spawns just because there's no one back there anchoring that spawn. So if we were to draw a circle around them right now, you would see that there are two spawns that are right around that circle, and then I guess there's the one kind of right next to that one as well that's also underground. So there's two spawns underground, and then there's one right by the stairs at the bottom of those stairs there. And it's likely going to be one of those spawns. I would be leaning more toward the one at the bottom of the stairs that's actually on the main level, and that's just from personal experience. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of Spawn Guides. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.